of the things that I was super interested in when I started experimenting with these AI language models was how they operated, right? So how they operated is, how they operate essentially is that they scrape, multiple gigabytes of data off the internet, and then they train themselves on that data, and then word by word, they try to establish language patterns that will look like, or what I would say, remix what we usually think of as human thought. And so watching these weaker AI systems try to remix human intelligence and human forms of communication into their own, what I call onto-operational presence, which is just a way of, revealing their stylistic tendencies as their own version of an applied remixologist. So as a writer, as a performer, as a visual artist, etc., I'm very interested in the relationship between what I call the source material everywhere and our, what Duchamp called our pure intuition, our intuitive sensibilities, our ability to prehend or grab, select the data that we find most relevant to our own aesthetic in real time, so that we can then remix it into some form of whatever you want to call it. Sometimes you might even just call it rhetoric or multimedia or digital rhetoric, which is something that I think is worth looking into more. So the relationship between rhetoric and remix. So in Remix the book, I was opening with a deep investigation of Alfred North Whitehead's Process and Reality, a Cosmology. And so his very metaphysical otherness approach to writing and thinking was very influential in the development of my theory of remixology. And he called it for him, like a remix. Of course, he didn't have the term remix. He called it a concrescent prehension. So this is when you have access to the data, you selectively choose what is most appealing to you, what is most aesthetically appealing to you, what satisfies you at that moment in time, and you find a way to concretely bring it together into the remix of the moment. And where does that come from, though? That brings me back to this idea of what I was talking about earlier, about where does it come from? Where does in the case of the artist, the creature, the one who is the applied remixology, where are they getting this otherworldly aesthetic sensibility that filters the selective data that they're grabbing and basically leads to the creation of new work? And it happens across the board. I think this can be, if you will, transcoded. So by training myself how to work with, language, where I'm basically like a psychic automaton, which is a remix of the surrealist notion of pure psychic automatism, for me to sort of like on the fly, as I'm doing right now in our conversation, remixing language, based off different models that I've trained myself on over the years. Now I'm delivering my remix of the moment one word at a time. So where is that coming from? Something that I'm talking about in the book, and this is maybe related also to remix now, so this is sort of an advancement of my theory on remix, is that our remixological tendencies, and I say as artists, and in that case, I'll invite everybody to be an artist, they're actually non-human behavioral functions. That's what I mean by tapping into an otherworldly aesthetic sensibility. In other words, it's not something that we can consciously take hold of and know we are doing at that moment in time. So if that's the case with us as artists, and it's also similarly the case with advanced AI systems who are creating these on the fly, in the case of language models, language remixes, what's the relationship between a language model and a language artist? Is it possible that they can learn from each other their own inherent non-human right? Information behaviors or functions. And then, of course, looking back at both Whitehead's cosmology and even, like, say, Buddhism, which is how I end the book, how does this relate to the creative spirit?